pretty scary stuff there. I don't want to be on a
home
plane
and
that's
I saw that on Twitter.
hijacked.
It was very scary, especially around the Pretoria area. I was like, wow, what is going on? But nice to know there was a false alarm. But let's move on with our bulletin this morning. And 21st International AIDS Conference is starting on the 18th next week in Durban. The event coincides with Mandela Day. Now, the theme for this year's AIDS conference is Access, Equity, Rights Now. The event is expected to be attended by 18,000 delegates, including top HIV/AIDS scientists, civil society members and policymakers.
Well, 180 countries are sending their representatives to the conference. This is for the second time that South Africa is hosting the conference. It was in 2000 when the 13th International AIDS Conference was held there. Well, to discuss this very, very important event, not only from an investment point of view, but also from a scientific point of view, we have the pleasure of welcoming Popo Maja from the Department of Health. He now joins us in studio. Popo, good morning to you. Appreciate your time. Is everything set to go for this important event? A lot of delegates, a lot of media attention. Is everything on track?
Good morning, sir. Indeed, everything is on track, and we are quite delighted that the 16th conference is coming to South Africa. We will remember that we had the 21st conference coming to South Africa. We had the 16th one in 2000. That was at the time when South Africa had faced a lot of uncertainty about how to respond to HIV and AIDS. You remember that there was, I would say, denialism at that time, and a lot of people were dying. And at his closing remarks, Nelson Mandela called upon the world and said, "We knew about this epidemic for almost 2 decades. What have we done?" Now, when we return to Durban this time around, we are going to inform the world what have we done in South Africa. We have done something that is miraculous in South Africa. There was a point when more than 2,000 people were dying a day, which was unparalleled in any country, even during a war situation. Now we have less people dying, and the life expectancy of South Africans has moved from 53 to 63. That is quite miraculous, and we are telling the world how have we responded to that.
Ms. Maja, there are certain reports suggesting that there are protests being planned outside of the conference venue. Are you aware of any planned protests, and what sort of action will you be taking? Will you be addressing those individuals and interacting with them?
Indeed, there will be protests. These protests are quite normal in any international conference. There are protests that would demand that their governments make treatment more accessible. We know that South Africa is the only government that provides treatment from its physicals up to 80%. There's no government anywhere, including in Africa, that actually provides free treatment to people who are living with AIDS, except South Africa. And the 20% that is there comes from the donor funding. But we are, in fact, we will be saying that it is important for us to respond quite effectively to the epidemic. Governments need to do something about financing the response from their own physicals as well. And we do know that Africa is facing the severest. Out of 100%, more than 90% of the epidemic can be found in Africa, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. So we would expect those people coming from those areas to say that they want access now. We are also expecting the gay and lesbian communities to protest and to call upon their own governments to allow the gay and lesbian community to access treatment and to be treated as human beings.
Now, Popo, you mentioned the huge strides. I mean, it is in many ways a miracle what we've done in South Africa to roll out antiretrovirals to people affected with HIV and AIDS. But many people, you're always going to have, as Abby says, protesters, naysayers. What is the government going to be doing to focus on prevention rather than cure, instead of having to roll out antiretrovirals at huge cost, to focus on trying to stop people, preventing people from getting HIV in the first place?
I'm happy that you're asking that question, because there is no cure for HIV and AIDS. There's absolutely no cure. I think over and above the response that we have right now, I think we need, as government, as society, introduce an alternative narrative, a narrative that seems to be moving away from giving the responsibility on a girl child to prevent HIV and AIDS, and a narrative that says we need to socialize a boy child differently. Right now, we have high pregnancy at primary schools and high schools. Who are the people who are impregnating these young kids? It's matured men like myself. Why are they not using condoms when we know that condoms prevent unwanted pregnancy and prevent HIV and AIDS quite effectively? It is a narrative that we need to introduce, to say to a boy child that you, though culture does say that you are head of the family, or you are more important than a human being, a woman, we are saying that a different narrative should be introduced, that a boy child should understand that women are not children of lesser God. We have situations where men think that it is not necessary when they are married to a person or they have a relationship with a person, it's not necessary for them to ask for consent. Men do not go out there and test. It becomes the responsibility of women to test their status. We are saying, we're calling upon men to actually go to clinics and know their status, so that they can actually be given treatment, and they actually can use preventative measures to ensure that the disease does not spread any further.
Definitely. So I read an article earlier saying that the conference will be remembering and commemorating the young activist Nkosi Johnson, and speaking about his legacy. Just talk us through the importance of remembering where we've come from and everything that we have achieved so far. Also talk to us about the theme and why that's so important this year.
In 2000, the young Nkosi Johnson spoke to the world. He spoke to the world as a child who was denied treatment, as a child who was discriminated, as a child who was rejected by communities, by schools. But more importantly, this is a child who said to governments, it is important that we should have treatment for people who are HIV, who are living with AIDS. This is a child who actually said there is no need for a child to die of HIV and AIDS. And we are going back to the world and saying that today, through our program, our response, we have reduced dramatically, almost towards elimination of mother-to-child transmission. Almost towards elimination. I mean, I think we are at the early 90s of eliminating mother-to-child transmission, which is quite miraculous. And more importantly, for me, is to actually report back to the world to say, what have we done about that call? of Nkosi Johnson. We know that we're still facing stigma. We know that people are scared of disclosing, but we say that there's nothing as effective as prevention.
Definitely.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Good luck with that conference. I know it's a huge investment also. It's something we didn't touch on. The international delegates coming into South Africa, 18,000 delegates. It's certainly a massive event for South Africa to host. One thing we do well, hopefully from that point on, we can continue to make great strides in our fight against HIV. That was Popo Maja from the Department of Health.